Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa begins by explaining that 5,000 years ago, during the Age of Despair, humanity almost came to extinction. And to save the world from the brink of collapsing, there were 4 great heroes. They all faced Erebos, the genesis of evil. One of the heroes was named Luna, the elven archmage, also called the poet of the stars. There was Dweno, the dwarven master smith, also called the divine blacksmith. Aaron, the beastman warrior, and the wise king, who was also a dragon, Linzinus. 5,000 years ago, we get to see exactly just what happened. In the midst of the battlefield, which reeked of chaos as the ground was littered with countless corpses, we then hear Linzinus telling a man named Kyle to go without them, but Kyle says not to talk. Linzinus continues, telling Kyle just to take their dragon heart and continue pushing forward. Kyle tells them that he's going to save them and to save their energy, but Linzinus says that it's too late for them. Kyle tells them to stop talking because he can't focus on his healing. Then Linzinus reaches into their own chest, much to Kyle's surprise, and pulls out their heart, asking him if he remembers when they first met, how they said they'd save the world. Kyle bites his lip, calling them a stupid lizard, and Linzinus says that they are sorry for leaving it all to him. As their eyes get too heavy, Linzinus drew their last breath and died. Kyle then starts saying all of the 4 heroes' names as he reaches towards the dragon heart. He begins to imbue it with aura. As it starts to take a different form, he thanks all of the heroes for being with him. As he forcefully injects it into his body, releasing a very powerful aura across the battlefield that can be seen from miles away, Kyle says no matter what, even if his body were to burn to ashes, he will continue fighting to make up for his friends' deaths. As his sword begins to glow with aura, we learn that this is the hero of the beginning, Kyle, and he charges in screaming at Erebos, leaping towards him for a powerful attack. Then it jumps to a woman saying on the night where the skies echoed with the great sound of explosions, all thanks to the wise King Linzinus' sacrifice, they drove away Erebos, the genesis of evil, and that was the end. A baby begins to cry. We hear a man asking the woman, who we learn is named Reina, why she's telling him the same story for the 100th time. She says that Leo loves this book the most. We see a little baby in the crib. She says that she's going to read him the heroes of the beginning again. She continues to do it, and he starts babbling. She mistakes it as him enjoying it when he's really just pissed that she won't stop reading this damn book. She goes to tell him about what happened 5,000 years ago, and he asks why she's even trying to tell him about it because he was the one who defeated Erebos. He wonders why he was the only one that has been written out of history. It then jumps sometime later, as we are taken to the Royal School of Delon as the teacher is telling everybody to lock in, and as they are currently all aware, they are in the Age of Heroes. It has been 5,000 years since the hero record first appeared in their world, and the lower world has experienced many changes since then. For instance, the Royal School of Delon has been selected to host this year's Lumen entrance examination, and he has no doubt that some among them have the makings of a hero who will pass the entrance exam and one day have their names written in the hero record. He's super excited, only to hear a student snoring, and he tells him to wake up as it's none other than Leo. The teacher tells Leo that since he must know all the course material well enough that he can fall asleep in his lectures, he's going to ask him a question, and that is, what ritual did one must go through 5,000 years ago to be labeled a hero? Leo stands up, saying that if you just made a name for yourself, people worship you on their own, and we are now formally introduced to him, and his name is Leo Plove from the House of Plove. The teacher sighs, asking if anybody else is willing to answer, and a student immediately raises his hand saying in ancient times there was no way to be acknowledged by the gods, and so only the holy rituals were used to select heroes. A prime example of a holy ritual is the ritual of blood. The teacher and the other students clap, saying as expected of Gullivan, the greatest magic genius of their kingdom, and he is from the House of Tratton. The teacher tells him that they have high hopes for him in the upcoming Lumen exam, and Gullivan laughs, looking at Leo, thinking that he one-upped him. Meanwhile, Leo's just reading his book, saying meeting gods was hella easy, and it wasn't even a holy ritual. He's reading a book that says a miracle gifted by the gods to the lower world to celebrate the great heroes that faced Erebos, and that is the hero record which his mother read to him a lot. He closes the book, wondering why he is the only one who was treated as if he didn't exist. A little later in class, everybody starts running to the windows, saying that it's the emblem of the Zerdinger clan, and they watch as a group of people parade down the halls, fawning over a lady named Celia Zerdinger. Over the intercom, somebody tells all the students to gather in the auditorium for an assembly. As the school is being visited by the Zerdinger clan, Gullivan asks Leo if he's going to go and try and get noticed by the Zerdingers, saying he doubts they would even care about him in the first place. Leo asks what he's yapping about, saying that he's just going straight home. Unlike him, he has no interest in things like this. Gullivan gets embarrassed, saying he doesn't either, and he's only going to check out Celia as a fellow rival. Sometime later, we see Leo training with a bow staff in his hand and a wooden sword on the floor. He just finished his session, and he says that part of it is diligent training, but his body this time around is really better than the one he had in his previous life. As he heads outside into the courtyard, we then hear a woman asking him what he's thinking about so hard as we see her coming in for a surprise attack from the side. Leo manages to block it and distances himself, saying that he can't believe she's ambushing him out of the blue. She says it's been a while since they sparred, and that his talent can't be lackluster for Lumen, and that this is his final test. As she raises her sword into the air, she swings down, and he manages to block it. She asks if she should put some more power into it. They then begin trading blow for blow with one another in the middle of the courtyard, and he says that she's showing him too much tough love, and we're introduced to his mother, who, of course, we know is Reina. She says he calls it tough love, but he is obviously blocking everything she throws at him. She comes in for an even more powerful blow, and she immediately realizes that she's putting too much power behind it as it's going straight towards Leo's head. She starts to panic, wondering what will happen if he can't dodge it, but of course, he easily sidesteps it, causing it to only graze his hair. He spots his chance, immediately thrusting forward with a counterattack, and much to her surprise, she was the one who ended up on the floor. He asks her if she's okay. But she just wonders how far his talents go, and she asks him if he's still set on going to Lumen, the Human Hero Academy. Lumen might be the only place that will hold the records of him as a hero, because he really wants to figure out why his name isn't written down anywhere. So he tells his mother, of course. She reminds him that members of the Zerdinger clan are here to visit Dellen, and they'll be staying at their mansion. He asks why they're staying here, and she says that he should get to know them, and she'll ask their vice patriarch, Zeiss, while they are here if he would be willing to teach Leo the Zerdinger aura technique, since with that, he should become strong enough to be admitted to Lumen next year. He just looks like he doesn't want to go through the hassle of learning the technique, and he smirks while sighing, telling his mother that he's going to be admitted this year instead. A carriage then arrives at the estate, and a woman asks why her uncle wants to stay here. She steps out of the carriage as we are introduced to Celia Zerdinger, who also has the nickname of Sword Princess. She says she wanted to focus on the Lumen entrance exam, asking why they came to such a small remote family. We see Zeiss calling out to her, asking if she's not curious about Leo because he's not interested in their clan whatsoever. She says that he still can't even use aura yet, so there's no way he's that impressive. Zeiss laughs, saying that he doesn't think she understands. Later in the evening, we see them meeting Reina, and Zeiss bows, saying it's an honor that they're having them stay over. Reina welcomes them, and we are introduced to Leo's father as well, named Dade, the patriarch of the House of Plove. Zeiss then introduces Celia to them, telling her that she should show them respect. She puts her hand over her chest, and gives them a very formal introduction, thanking them for opening their house to them for the next week. Reina tells her that it's nice to meet her while thinking that she takes after her father and brother. Celia then realizes that Reina's hair is black and her eyes are red, asking if she's of their lineage as well. Zeiss tells her that Reina is actually her aunt, much to her surprise. As their luggage is being carried to the room, we hear Zeiss talking to Reina, saying that they first visited the Royal School of Dellen, and it was chaotic with all of the students rushing over to see them. However, Leo seemed to have gone home because he wasn't interested at all. Reina laughs, saying that must be a mighty hit for the pride of the Zerdinger, saying that she's sorry if her son seems disrespectful, and he's not interested in anything other than training. Zeiss then asks what kind of kid Leo is, and Reina says that he has unbelievable talent. Zeiss then asks if she honestly believes that Leo is worthy enough to inherit the flames of the Zerdinger, and Reina says that she's not saying this because he's her son, but he genuinely is worthy. As we see him training with Celia, Zeiss says that if she's willing to say that, then he really is interested. However, he will need to test him himself to make sure that what she is saying is true. As we see Celia being pushed back by Leo, we get a little bit of a flashback to before they were training, as we see Leo meditating in the training area. Aura begins to float around his wrist, and he opens his eyes looking down at it, saying, "It's about time," and now he has a vessel able to hold everything. The reason he had not learned aura yet is that the moment he accepts it, the body will naturally become specialized to match that aura. The opportunity to accumulate mana and soul energy disappears, and if in his past life, if he could completely control those guys' power and presence, he wouldn't have left behind a seedling of disaster. First comes aura, and then before he can finish a sentence, Celia approaches him, asking if he's Leo, and he turns around confused as she stands there all prideful. She says it seems that he has a decent grasp of the basics and that she will especially guide him in swordsmanship, asking what he thinks, as she wants to use this chance to earn some brownie points from her aunt. Leo asks her who she is, and she introduces herself as Celia, saying that the world calls her the Sword Princess. He asks if this is really the case and thanks her for thinking about him, but says he has no thoughts of receiving guidance from someone of lesser skill than himself. She barks, asking if he's really claiming to be stronger than her. He says that in a fight to the death, she's probably stronger since he can't use aura, however sparring with only swordsmanship is a different story. Her eyes start to fill with anger, and she turns around looking at the practice swords, grabbing one off the wall. She says that if he's that confident in his skills, then he should spar with her, and that if he thinks that he'll become stronger than her just when he learns aura, then she'll teach him the harshness of reality. She says that if she wins during her entire stay, he'll become her servant. He asks what he'll get if he wins, and she points her sword at him, thinking about it, and says that she'll become his servant instead. He grabs his sword off the floor, asking if they can start immediately, as he leaps forward swinging at her. She blocks it and says that his speed isn't too shabby, however that won't be enough to take her down. Leo then raises his hands up, coming down for another overhead attack, and she wonders what kind of strength this is, as she has to forcibly distance herself, leaving Leo smashing into the ground, shattering it. He doesn't even give her a chance to breathe, as he comes in with another attack, but she realizes that she can't dodge, and he swings his sword towards her head, and we hear it hit something. Then he asks why she's using aura, saying that he thought this was a spar of pure swordsmanship, and she tells him that it was just a reflex. He says it doesn't matter, as he'll win regardless. She asks what he's talking about, saying controlling aura is like the difference between heaven and earth, and he then takes off the bracelet, throwing it onto the ground, asking if she wants to test it out. She can't believe that he was using a weighted bracelet the entire time, and Leo smirks as he dashes off the ground once more, this time shattering her aura armor completely. As she starts to lose consciousness, she asks how someone like this can exist, as he is way too brutish, calling him a crazy bastard. We then see Reina and Zeiss walking through the courtyard, and she spots Leo, telling him to come introduce himself, a guest who's staying at their household. Leo walks over, bowing his head to Zeiss, and Zeiss says that he may already know this, but he's his uncle. While sticking his hand out, and they shake hands. His mother then asks if he's met Celia yet, and when he thinks about it, he turns around to see her being carried out on a stretcher. Some of the guards are screaming out her name, saying they need to hurry and get her to the infirmary. Zeiss then asks what happened, and one of the guards starts telling him, and Zeiss can't believe that he defeated Celia without having learned aura. He then tells him that's quite impressive, and Leo says that she underestimated him. Zeiss then says one of the guards mentioned a bet, asking what the deal was, and Leo says that the loser was to become the servant of the winner, and that she's going to be his maid for the entirety of this upcoming week. Zeiss says that keeping one's word is important, but reminds him that she's from the Zerdinger house, and he cannot order her to do a maid's work. He hopes that Leo will rescind the promise, and he'll instead give him something as a reward. Leo says that he refuses, and this was wagered between him and Celia, and as long as she retains the Zerdinger name, she takes the responsibility. Zeiss asks if he really wants to do this, even though he's offering him the Zerdinger breathing method, and Leo says that he believes that being given this to prevent her from being humiliated has no value in being learned. Zeiss says just now he is declaring that he will use the direct lineage of the Zerdinger as a servant, and that the Zerdinger aura method is worthless, asking if this is correct. Leo says that he's glad he can listen, and Zeiss asks if he doesn't think that such a declaration is impudent. Leo says he has no intention of insulting the Zerdingers, and if his intentions were to reward him for beating Celia by teaching him the breathing method, he would have gladly accepted it. However, he said that it would be a gift for sweeping away her loss, which means that he believes that if Celia hadn't let her guard down, she would not have lost to him. However, even if she sparred in earnest, he still would have won. Zeiss starts to smile, saying that he really is an interesting child. If only there was someone like this within his family. He orders the guard to come over, telling them to send Celia to the maid's quarters. He then calls out to Leo, saying that in an unofficial setting, he can always comfortably call him uncle, as he puts his hand on his shoulder. Then he watches Leo walk away, and he calls out to Reina, saying that he thought she wanted him to teach Leo their breathing technique. He then says that he's going to go ask their older brother and convince him so that Leo can learn the Phoenix breath technique instead. It then jumps to a bedroom, as we see Celia's face completely flushed, and she says that she's the maid who will be in charge of him for the next week, as she's now fully dressed up, looking hella embarrassed. Leo tells her that it suits her, and he never would have imagined how suited she would be in maid's clothes because she's always wore something fancy. She says that she knows she's beautiful, but if he says it like that, she can't help but get pissed. He says that he didn't mean to make her angry, and that he has a certain friend who praises beauty way too much, and his habits must have rubbed off on him. We then hear Dueno's voice saying, "The beauty of the eternal is unparalleled, and if peace returns to this world, then I will spend the rest of this life spreading beauty to everyone." Celia sighs, saying that he has a cool friend that knows how to appreciate and praise beauty. Though Leo kept out a bit of it, the problem was that Dueno was too honest. Although she was aggressive, Lindsana's was more beautiful than anyone, and Luna, for the sake of art, he begged them to become nude models, and then they beat the shit out of him. Mans. Celia wonders what he's reading, thinking that it might be some kind of training book. He tells her that it's just a book he read a lot when he was young, and it's the great hero at the beginning. She recalls it being something that she read a lot when she was 5 years old, wondering why he's reading a child's book. She then seems curious about something and walks over to his bookshelf, saying that it seems that he really likes the great hero of the beginning, and the average researcher of the great hero would probably be impressed because he keeps everything about them so neatly organized. But for some reason, there are lots of books about Kyle. Leo tells her that among everything the great heroes did, there are many things that are hard to attribute to a particular hero, and he thinks those achievements are most likely his. She asks what he's talking about, saying Kyle is definitely just a scammer who tried to claim the achievements of the great heroes. He double checks she's talking about Kyle. She says that's what everybody else thinks, and that she's the same way. He can't believe that's what people think about him, and he asks if she wants to go eat breakfast and start training. She says if he would allow it, she would like to train with him. In reality, she just wants to figure out the truth behind his strength, and he says it might be hard for her to keep up, asking if she'll be okay. She gets pissed, reminding him that she's deserting her. And then we see her on the ground. He says when her stamina reaches a limit, her reaction speed slows, and even more gaps appear between her movements, and when that happens, she leaves her back free just like she did just now. She asks why he's abusing his body like this, asking if it's really gonna be helpful in training. He says that young people these days are too weak compared to the past, and the techniques have developed to be very difficult to train with. He explains that aura allows you to train your body, so if your body is weak, then there's no point. Celia stands up shaking, asking what he means by weak, and Leo shakes his head as she starts to vomit everywhere. She points her sword at him, showing that she's ready, and yells, telling him not to underestimate her, and then charges directly at him. He swings his sword downwards, knocking hers out of her hand, causing her to fall back to the floor. As she's sliding across, she wonders why she can't win. He walks over to her, saying it must be hard, asking if she agrees, and then he tells her to stick her hand out. He hands her the bracelet, and now she thanks him but falls straight to the ground, due to the sheer weight of it. He tells her that from tomorrow onward, she's going to wear it while they train. The next day in the courtyard, we see Celia gassed out, telling him to stop, as Zeiss watches in the background, and he says this is gonna be a good thing, since this is going to be a good experience for her. Before going to Lumen, it might be good for her pride to be humbled at least once. He then calls out to Leo, and he walks over to see what he wants. Zeiss says that he's thinking of asking the Patriarch to allow him to inherit Phoenix Breath. Leo's surprised by this and wonders if he's talking about the family's origin for the aura technique, and he heard that only people who are recognized within the family can inherit it. Celia says that her father won't accept that so easily, and Zeiss says that's why he has a condition. Celia asks what it is, and he says that Leo needs to pass the Lumen entrance exam. She tells him that the exam is an actual fight, and he can't even use aura, so it'll be too dangerous for him. Leo starts to smirk, saying that he guesses he really doesn't have any experience in real fights, but that's only applicable in this life because in the end, he still defeated Erebos and a whole lot of other demons. Zeiss asks him what he thinks about it, and Leo says he doesn't know what his mother and father will think. Zeiss says they've already agreed to it, and Leo says that he's down then. Zeiss starts to smirk, saying as expected, he was definitely going to take this exam to begin with. Leo then tells Celia that it's time to continue, and we see her running after him, asking if he really thinks she won't be able to keep up. It then jumps to a week later, as we see a bunch of students getting ready for the Lumen entrance exam. They start mumbling about how Celia is here and wonder who's next to her, as she asks Leo if he's nervous. He says not at all, and says that she should fix her way of speaking since she just called him young master, and she's completely forgotten that she's no longer his maid. We then hear Gullivan calling out to her, and he's surprised to see Leo beside her, saying that he can't even handle aura, asking why he's here, and then immediately swaps his attitude, asking Celia how she's been. They both just seem annoyed that he's here, and he introduces himself to Celia, saying that last time she was at school, he greeted her, and he's called Dellen's greatest magic genius. She apologizes, saying that she has no idea who he is, and then grabs Leo's hand, saying that she's going to be heading off then as she walks away. We then hear somebody else call out her name, as two white-haired students approach them, and Celia is surprised, and Leo wonders what's with her reaction. We are introduced to two people from the Lulin family, and that is Abad and Chelsea, and they tell Celia that it's been a long time. Leo asks her who they are, and she tells them that they are the Lulin siblings from the same hero lineage of the Lorden Empire. Those two will be taking the exam with them, so they absolutely cannot lose to them. They can't have the Zerdinger clan lose against the Lulin family at all. He reminds her that he's from the Plo family, and Abad tells her that it's been quite a while, and she agrees. He then wonders who's next to her, and she introduces him, saying that he is a noble from the kingdom of Deled. Abad says that must mean he's a small fry, and Leo glares at him. Then Abad turns away, saying the top spot will surely be his, telling his sister Chelsea they should get going. Celia's annoyed, saying she's going to make sure to crush them thoroughly. A man then says that it seems like everybody's gathered here, and they all look up at him. We are introduced to a professor at Lumen Academy named Albay Zarin, who low-key looks like Gojo. Celia's surprised, asking if that's the sorcerer of Mon, and Leo asks who he is. She asks if he really doesn't know, saying he's a hero listed in the record. Leo says that must mean he's a hero of this era, and then looks back up at the guy, recognizing the mana in the dude's left eye. Albay starts explaining that there are two types of trials, one-on-one combat and monster subjugation, and each person takes turns doing them. He starts to burn the paper, saying he finds this method tedious, and he doesn't want to do that boring shit. He then moves his coat aside, pulling out a book, which is the hero record. He starts using magic, taking them to his world, showing the first chapter, called the Wild Forest, as a giant magic circle appears beneath all of the students. His hands start to glow as words start to fly out of the book, and he tells them all that he hates inefficiency the most. As they all start to get blinded by the light, his left eye starts to release a golden aura, and he says he's just going to combine everything and proceed at once. Leo starts to think about something and recalls his teacher saying that the hero record isn't just a mere historical record, but its true value lies in its ability to manifest the hero's world, containing the experiences of past heroes. Moreover, by attaining heroes' worlds, one can inherit the power of a previous hero. Leo says he thought it was some kind of hero training system, and then when he opens his eyes, he's now in Albay's world as we are introduced to the Wild Forest. Albay tells them that the rules are simple, and they just need to survive. Whether they join forces or eliminate one another, they can do whatever they want, and those who want to forfeit can break the orb they are holding onto in return. Leo looks around while the rest are panicked, saying that this place looks the same. He starts to walk forward, saying this used to be an elven forest before it was polluted by the witch queen Salatna. Some of the students start asking what this is, saying that this is way too scary, and they want to go back. Everybody wonders what's going on, and they just decide that it's probably an illusion and call it pathetic. Leo says that's wrong, as while this world may have come from the memories of the examiner, everything that happens here is real. The deadly hazards here could really kill somebody. He then senses something, as he sidesteps a surprise attack. As we see an arrow hit the ground before him. Someone starts to make their way out of the brush. We hear a familiar voice saying that they've met before, and it's none other than Chelsea, saying that she's glad to eliminate someone from the Zerdinger. He then tells her that he's a member of the Plo family, and she starts to release her aura, saying that she saw him with Celia earlier. Then she summons a weapon called the Wind Sickle. He says that's a spell that definitely did not exist in the past, and the basics don't seem to have changed much, though, as he readies his blade. She spots it and then starts to laugh, saying he still looks so relaxed even with her right in front of him. She starts twirling her sickle in the air and then throws it directly at Leo at an incredible speed. He simply swings his blade, hitting the sickle, causing it to fall on the ground behind him. She asks how he blocked it since she didn't sense him using any aura, wondering if it's an aura attribute that's hard to detect. Leo sighs, saying that attack was way too simple, asking why they don't just join forces instead. Since whoever survives the longest gets the most points, as a sorceress, she needs to pass at least one test. Chelsea then starts to laugh, saying that unfortunately, she is a battle mage, and since he just called her last attack simple, she would love to see him handle this. He says that he means for wind magic, that attack was just straightforward, compared to the power that is. She asks if he's really trying to lecture her about magic, even though she is a direct descendant of the Lulin family. She then launches another wind sickle, as well as a wind arrow. She then doesn't even see him anymore, wondering what's going on as there isn't even a trace of mana. Leo's already closed the gap, as we see him barehanded, ready to show her some domestic violence no jutsu. We see her sickle floating through the air, as she drops to her knees, coughing, and he says that he's going to politely ask her to join forces with him once more. Back on the outside, we see a screen starting to form as everybody is excited that they're finally going to be able to watch the exam. As soon as the screen connects, we see Chelsea tied up against a tree, as Leo's holding the rope, starting a campfire, looking like he is a straight villain. A bit later in the night, the fire is actually lit now, and Chelsea starts to wake up and sees it below her, starting to freak out. He asks if she's going to cooperate or not. She tells him never, as she doesn't need anyone other than her brother. She starts to try to cast another wind sickle, but a red magic circle on her wrist stops her from using anything. He tells her that's a skill that restricts magic, and she doesn't know that it won't last for long since he doesn't have much mana. She then tells him that she doesn't need magic to get out of this, and he wonders if she thought he would let her focus on that. As he starts to pull the rope tighter, she immediately screams, telling him to wait, saying that it's too hot. The fire starts to burn some of her skirt, and he tells her to cooperate. She says that she will. He tells her to swear on her family name, and she starts screaming saying okay, telling him that she will do it. Leo lets go of the rope, saying that she's way too easy to manipulate. She starts to fall off the pole, closing her eyes out of fear. When she opens them, he's Princess carrying her, saying it's nice to meet her. Back at the screening room, we see everybody watching the fights, and Albay in particular says that none of them are even up to standard, and they're choosing to compete and fight with each other, calling them foolish. He says the only ones to get straight to the point are those two, which are Celia and Abad. He says that the Republic's future will be bright, as he spots both Leo and Chelsea teaming up as well. He watches Leo cut up an ogre and says that the fire stunt was immature, but getting Chelsea to cooperate warrants a passing grade. He doesn't have the power or grace of Celia and Abad, but he's definitely an unexpected dark horse. We see a wind arrow pass straight through the monster's chest. As Leo cuts its head off, it falls to the ground, and she says that working alongside a knight makes things pretty comfortable for her. Then she asks what aura he's using, saying she can't detect any mana from it. He tells her that he doesn't know how to use aura, and she asks how he did that without it. He says that as with anything, a good foundation is important, as we see them being watched from the forest. She spots it, and he tells her that it's the same with wind magic, asking how important she thinks the foundation is. She glares as she starts to cast a spell, called the Windbreaker, directly towards whatever was watching them in the forest, killing it on the spot. She says that it's pretty insolent that he's speaking of magic in front of a Lulin. He says that she has power, but she'd used it wrong. She starts to get annoyed, and Leo stops moving, sticking his hand out, telling her not to take another step. He then crouches down, and Chelsea says they look like mummies. He says he's seen things that leave their victims like this before, and now he understands the conditions to pass this test. The spidey senses tingle as he grabs Chelsea's and dives off to the side with her, protecting her. We hear some students saying that they need to get rid of Chelsea first, as the other dude is a nobody. It's none other than Gullivan, the third-rate villain. He tells them to attack together as they start to charge Leo. Leo's eyes start to lock in as he punches one of the dudes straight in the face, knocking him out instantly. Gullivan's surprised, but so is Chelsea as her heart's starting to beat a hell of a lot faster. Leo tells her to watch his back. Gullivan then asks his boys what they're waiting for as they start to charge at them together. Leo then begins to release some aura, as we see Gullivan hauling absolute cheeks while his boys are fighting Leo. What a coward. He says he can't go out like this, and he just needs to find another party. As he's running away, Celia spots him, telling Abad that they should head over in this direction. We see them both making surprised expressions as they come across Leo and Chelsea, along with all the other students who are taking quick little naps. Chelsea's super happy to see her brother and runs over to him, and Celia asks why they are together. He tells her that he suggested they cooperate, and she says there's no way that stubborn girl agreed to it. He starts smiling, saying that he convinced her in a very friendly way. He then starts picking up one of the students, and Chelsea asks why he's helping them. Leo tells them that they don't need to fight anymore, and they can just beat this world together. They ask what he means by beat the world, and he says there is an anomaly in the wild forest, telling them to look at the corpses. It's like their moisture was sucked out, and that's not all, wondering where all the other monsters are at. Celia says that now she thinks about it, he's right. It feels like they're afraid of something. Leo says that a high-tier monster must have appeared and scared off the rest of the monsters. Abad says that he understands, and that Albay's first feat was defeating a high-tier monster. Then a chill runs down his spine as they start to feel an ominous aura from the woods in front of them. Every one of them freezes up in fear, and Leo says it's finally revealed itself. Back to Gullivan, he's walking through the forest with his staff lit up, and he says no matter what it takes, he's going to make sure Leo fails. He then spots someone laying on the floor and falls down at the side of the corpse, and immediately something starts dripping all over his staff. Pause. And then he feels it on his head, seemingly paralyzed with fear, as when he looks up there is a giant spider getting ready to devour him. Back at the academy, Albay is watching the exam. Some students are talking about how much work they put in. Albay says about 500 of them so far have all failed. Another one of the teachers tries telling him that even if that's the case, he has to pick around 100, just like the other regions, as there are only 50 students left in the test. Albay says that if they don't meet the standards, he's willing to fail them all, and Headmaster Callian put him in charge of the test, knowing he would do this, and that a real hero can only be found in difficult times, and Leo must have noticed the anomaly in the forest. But that doesn't mean he's going to be able to beat this world. As they all start running towards something, some of the students say that it's too dark to see anything, but Celia notices that there's something up ahead, telling them to get ready. She starts to put aura on the tip of her blade, and when it illuminates the darkness, we see Gullivan right in the inside of the spider's mouth. She wonders what kind of nightmare fuel they are looking at. Abad says that this must be what's behind everything, and starts to channel a magic spell. Leo stops him, telling Gullivan to snap out of it and break the crystal. Gullivan is annoyed to see him, but reluctantly does it, breaking the crystal, teleporting him out of the world. As we see it, leave a yellow trail from the spider's mouth. Abad then starts to cast his spell again, which is called Wind Fang, and it starts to stab the monster all over. We see it's not deep enough to kill it, and they all look surprised, except Leo, as the monster already healed it off, and he says it's just as he expected, it's the spider princess tarantula. One of the students leaps at it with his halberd, telling it to eat this, only for him to get swatted away like a fly. What a hero. He lands in the bushes behind them, and Celia says she's going to finish it off in one blow as she starts to channel aura onto the tip of her blade again, using an ability called Prominence. She shoots out an aura beam directly through the spider princess's skull, only for it to instantly regenerate. She says there's no way, and Abad says the difference in destructive power between a mage and knight is night and day. He uses another spell called Rawfall, as it starts to swirl above him. We see the rest doing their best not to get caught up in his spell. He then unleashes it, and it actually wounds the tarantula all over, cutting it everywhere. He realizes that it's going to take more than that. But while he's lost in thought, the spider princess quickly jumps into the air with him, and starts to launch an attack. In a panic, Chelsea launches a windbreaker to protect her brother, but he still manages to get hurt, though they avoided it being a fatal injury. He regroups with them. The hero student from earlier asks what kind of monster that is, saying that thing's regeneration is nuts, as it's already fully healed from Abad's attack. Leo says that it's the daughter of Salatna, the queen of Tartarus, and it is a monster within Erebus's army that raised the elf forest. They're all surprised to hear the name Tartarus. Leo says the mana in Albay's left eye was indeed the fairy king's mana. Tarantula ruled over the cursed wild forest, and she destroyed the forest of the elves, and ate the right hand of the fairy king who fought against her. He was sure that Luna killed it, but it seems the fairy king's right hand in her stomach must have saved her, or more precisely the source of infinite life energy on that hand, the ring of life. Abad says if the monster is the key to defeat the test, then he will do it, and Celia asks why he's talking so big, as they both start to unleash combo attacks on the spider princess. It eats the attacks without even dodging it, just regenerating it over and over, and Leo tells them that it's pointless and they're just going to run out of mana because it's healing through their damage. As that is exactly what the Spider Queen is doing, with a weird green aura emanating from it. Celia then asks what he suggests they do, and he says the two of them need to work together. Abad says he refuses, as he's going to be the top scorer, and Celia says it'll be her. He says if they don't do this, they won't be able to beat the world, and all of them are going to fail. They both freeze upon hearing this, and Abad says even if they work together, it'll take time to set up an attack capable of killing it, and no one except the two of them can stall the monster long enough. Celia realizes he's right, and even Chelsea does as well, and Leo tells them that he'll do it. Celia tells him that suicide is, he can't even use aura, and he says that he can definitely buy them 5 minutes. Abad asks what the plan is if the attack fails, and Leo turns back, smiling at him, and then picks up the hero from earlier's halberd, saying he doesn't think that'll happen, as fire and wind have always been really good together, and they work well with one another. Celia and Abad stare at one another, realizing he is right. While the Spider Princess leaps at Leo. He sighs, saying this reminds him of old times, as he has already cut off a couple of the Spider Princess's legs. He continues swinging, cutting off one after the other, saying that it's been a while, surprising Celia and Abad. Leo continues his barrage, even hitting in the head this time, and he says he hasn't fought a monster of Tartarus in quite a while. It then jumps to a small elven child running through the forest until they get stuck in some webs, begging for somebody to help them as Tarantula makes her way over to her next victim. The kid begins to cry, calling out for his mother, and we hear a woman's voice telling Tarantula to step back. When the kid opens his eyes, he sees a bright light. As Luna begins to make her way through the forest, she asks Tarantula why it dared impede on their land and devour one of their own. She sends out a shockwave of her aura, which sends Tarantula running away, but she doesn't give it the chance. We see her casting magic from her staff, unleashing a giant attack of both light and electricity mixed together. We then hear Kyle saying he never thought that Erebos' influence would reach all the way over here. As he starts to approach the elven boy, he asks him if he's okay while pulling the webs off of him. Back to the present, we see Leo wondering about something, and he says that this might be the limit without him using aura. He then calls out to Chelsea, who is still not used to the situation, and he says that she needs to use wind magic and send the surrounding weapons flying at him. He dodges another one of Tarantula's attacks, and she tells him that if she does that while he's moving quickly, he's going to get hurt. He tells her that he's going to grab the weapons, so not to worry, and just do it already. She starts to channel her magic, asking what weapon he wants, and he says all of them. We then see her magic picking up the weapons, and Leo says that, based on the sound, one is a scimitar and the other must be a bastard sword. He leaps up into the air, grabbing the two of them from Chelsea's assist, and tells Tarantula they are just getting started, as he dashes back in. He cuts off the tips of Tarantula's legs quite a few more times. As soon as his weapons break, he tells her to send in the next volley, and we see her doing exactly that as she sends in a knife, a spear, and an axe. Leo continues making light work of all the weapons until they break, repeating the process. Chelsea says that he should be their age, but that side makes him look like he's some kind of martial god as he's facing the Spider Queen with a variety of weapons. Even Celia and Abad can't help but watch, and Abad says that it turns out he wasn't just a small fry. We then see Leo now has a cut on his cheek, and he starts to smile, saying he still has his senses. If he can't stop a bug like this, those guys are going to laugh at him from the afterlife. He tightens the grip on his blade and dashes in, breaking it as well, telling her to send in the next one. She then tells him that was actually the last weapon, and he asks if she's kidding. Celia interrupts them, saying that she's finished her preparation for her attack, and we see a giant spiral of flames as she and Abad had just created some kind of fire tornado. Tarantula starts to burn to a crisp, and it's to the point where the regeneration isn't enough. Finally, the ring falls out of its stomach onto the ground. Albai's world has now been cleared, at least the prologue that is, and Celia falls to the ground out of relief, saying that it's over. She can't believe that he really blocked that monster for 5 minutes, and she goes to tell him good job, but Chelsea starts screaming how amazing that was, saying that he looked like one of the heroes that appear in stories. As we see that, she is definitely catching a case of the feelings. He asks if that's really what she thought, and she says yes, and since she wants to become a battle mage, she needs to learn more about close-range combat, and she would love for him to teach her. Celia starts to get PTSD, saying that she hopes Chelsea can really experience Leo's training at least once. Leo then reaches down onto the ground, picking up the ring, wondering if it's the one that he thinks it is. We then see a little fairy appear in front of him as the ring starts to release a golden light. I think this is the fairy from the flashback, named Prince Silid. Leo asks if he remembers him, saying that he's Kyle, and Silid nods his head and smiles, going back into the ring. Leo says that it seems he managed to become the Fairy King, and it seems that, thanks to the treasure Albai found, he recovered the Eye of Mana. Then on the intercom, it says that the countdown for the testing ground return is starting, and the world begins to shatter into pieces as they are slowly taken back to their world. We hear a voice telling Leo that the reward for his clear is the Fairy King's pledge, and Leo is surprised as he starts to feel some kind of dimension warping. It seems as if he recognizes who he's staring at, but of course, we don't get to see their face, and he is then taken back to reality. Back on the other side, we're now up in a tall building, and a man says that it seems like the exam in the Western Territory is over. We are introduced to the principal of Lumen Academy, who happens to be a swordmaster by the name of Kalyan Bietian. As an assistant asks if it's already over, saying the other territories still have a lot left, they wonder how many people Albai passed. Kalyan says that taking into consideration it's Albai they're talking about, there's a lot, and there have been 40 students. The assistant asks if that's a lot, and Kalyan tells her not to think about it too much, as he was expecting only about 10 people, and he's pretty happy with the results. She says that if she had to guess, it would be Celia and Abad who are at the top, and Kalyan says that he heard it was hard to pick and there was someone who was recommended as the freshman representative. She's surprised that he recommended somebody, saying that was pretty unexpected, asking if it was Celia or Abad, and he says it was a name he's never heard before. As the students are all cheering for Celia and Abad, since they were technically the ones who killed Tarantula, we see Albai actually staring at Leo as he has a different thought from the rest, and he recommends Leo as the freshman representative in the night division. Kalyan says he never thought Albai would speak so highly of a student, and he wonders what kind of kid he is as he was determined to have the talent to be a hero. It then jumps to a bathhouse as we hear Leo saying that pain like this should be treated with care and time. As he's sitting in the bath, he says this is actually hella relaxing. He then starts to take his head under the water, recalling the figure he met that told him the reward is the Fairy King's pledge. He says that when you clear a living hero's world, you're actually not meant to gain a reward, yet somehow he alone was given one. He wonders what exactly it was. Something then catches his attention as his mother enters the room and asks if he knows why she was expelled from the house of Zerdinger. He has no clue. She tells him that while rescuing a comrade, she ended up losing the flames of Zerdinger. However, not once has she regretted her decision. She wants him to use his power and talent for the right cause and congratulates him on being accepted to Lumen Academy. It then jumps once more to some kind of warp gate above the city that we saw Kalyan at. A voice then tells him that he's arrived at Lemuria City and to please make sure he's collected all of his belongings before exiting the gate. Leo's finally taking in the scenery of the city, which looks hella cool. There's even a castle off in the distance. Leo says that this is the center of the world, and it turns out that the castle is actually Lumen Academy. We then hear Zeiss asking him how the last month has been and congratulating him on passing the exam. Leo thanks him but asks what he's doing here. Zeiss says that their house has been caught in an unending debate for the last month, asking Leo if he knows why. Leo asks if they've come to a consensus on him getting the Phoenix breath. Zeiss says exactly, though his elder sister is no longer a member of the house, he is still her son, and not to mention the elders were impressed that he passed the Western exam. He hands him a key, explaining that this is called a subspace key, and tells him to open it. Leo does exactly that as he twists it into the air, and immediately it starts to release some kind of flames. A giant book appears in front of Leo and starts to open itself, and it's actually hot enough that it causes him to sweat. But we see the book is empty, and Zeiss tells him that he needs to stain the page with a drop of his blood. Leo then does the typical anime thing where he bites the piss out of his thumb, causing it to bleed, and pours it over the book. The flames start to dissipate as it changes into a warm golden aura. Zeiss tells him that only he can read this book, and it won't be easy to learn the secrets of the Zerdingers, but he has a feeling that he will master it in no time. He pats him on the shoulder and congratulates him on becoming a member of the house. It then jumps to a clothing store as Leo is looking around, saying that this is where Celia wanted to meet him. A woman then bumps into him as her books fall all over the floor. We see her startled as Leo is just confused. She looks up, seeing him, and quickly apologizes, saying she wasn't looking where she was going. She then hurries off, but he notices something on the ground and picks it up. It's none other than her student ID. Her name is Chloe Muller, and she is a freshman at Lumen Academy. Leo enters the shop, and we hear Celia asking what took him so long, saying that they need to get his uniform, his textbooks, and a lot more. There's way too much to shop for him. He tells her that he actually went to go meet with Uncle Zeiss, and she seems excited, asking how the decision went. He then holds his hand out as a flame starts to form onto it, his eyes also releasing a fiery aura, and he starts to show off in front of her the Phoenix breath, right in the middle of a store, which low-key doesn't seem like a good idea. She drops all of her bags in shock, saying there's no way. It took her 3 weeks just to get a feel for the secret technique, yet he learned it in just an afternoon, and she wonders what the hell he is. They all head to the port as we see a bunch of students ready to board the ship. A man then starts to approach all of the students, and we even see Leo and Celia. He says it's nice to meet them, and he is Professor Orlando, in charge of the freshman night class. And then tells them that they are going to be departing for Lumen now and to get on the ship. We learn he has the title of Glacier Knight. As the ship departs, we see Ein drinking some wine on the edge while Leo and Celia walk around exploring the ship. A man then calls out to them, calling them a couple, and asking if they have a moment to chat. Celia starts to get angry, and the man introduces himself as Carr Thomas, saying that he is from the kingdom of Moira. We learn he is an alchemist. He says he sells everything from potions to weapons and not to hesitate if they need anything while in school. Leo calls him an interesting kid, takes his business card, and introduces himself. Carr recognizes where he is from, asking if that means he passed the Western exam, calling that an impressive thing. Leo asks if he is the only one who finds the situation strange, and he says it's so peaceful it feels uncanny. Celia says that it's a warm welcome for the freshmen that passed the exam, asking if this isn't normal. But Leo can't help but shake this feeling and is even looking over at Ein. Carr says there's no way they'd be rough with students before orientation, and on cue, the ship starts to shake as Leo is the only one who maintains his balance. He says that's exactly what he thinks they would do as a giant tentacle starts to reach out of the ocean. It slams down on the ground right in front of Carr, causing him to fall to the ground. The students start to beg Professor Ein to help, and he swirls his wine, taking a sip, saying that they are now all students of Lumen Academy. When there's danger, they need to overcome it themselves, as we see some kind of giant kraken-looking monster now looming over the ship. As people start to drop their food out of panic, Leo immediately gets into action, cutting off one of Kraken's tentacles, telling Celia to calm down. She tells him to worry about himself as she also starts to imbue her sword with heat, but we see the tentacle coming in behind for a surprise attack. The Kraken then pulls its tentacles away from the boat, only to return with a big splash. Celia screams, and Leo tells her that's the natural behavior of a Kraken as it reacts to heat with a water spray, adding that this is basic knowledge. We see her annoyed that he's lecturing her. One of the students then gets picked up by his foot. Celia and Leo see this and quickly start running on the Kraken, cutting its tentacle off, allowing the student to land back on the ship. Carr watches this from under a table and says that it's a given since Celia is the top scorer, but what the hell is the deal with Leo? He's also insanely strong. Then, Carr almost gets crushed to death by a frozen piece of tentacle. He screams, telling somebody to watch where they're throwing the debris. We see none other than Chloe, the girl Leo bumped into earlier, using ice magic. Leo recognizes her as she floats in the air, unleashing icicles into the Kraken. She tells Carr that he should stay in the back if he can't protect himself, and Carr sighs, saying the strong never care if the weak get caught in the battle. I wonder how he even made it into the academy. Yet again, another piece drops as it's none other than the Lulin siblings. Both Abad and Chelsea appear. Abad starts to run off, telling Celia the competition isn't over, and Celia sighs, saying the feeling is mutual, while Chelsea is too busy staring at Leo. She smiles and then turns away, leaving Leo wondering what she wants. Ein starts to pour himself another glass of wine, saying there are plenty of monsters in the lake leading to Lumen Academy, and the Kraken is perfect for a welcoming party. As expected, the captains all stand out. We see a student named Chen Xia of the east, both Celia and Abad of the west, Chloe Muller of the north, a student who is just brute forcing the tentacles named Walden Eden of the south, and a student named Duran Moira of central. Ein says that all of this year's freshmen are excellent as we watch them all working together, kind of, as they start to defeat the Kraken. Chen takes a fat sip, saying there is only one student he's most impressed by, and it's that unknown freshman. Ein notes Leo's swordsmanship has no wasted movements, and he's moving as if he can predict all of the Kraken's actions. He starts to smile, saying he'll be seeing him soon for night studies and he's looking forward to this year's students. They finally make it to Hogwarts. Sorry, I meant Lumen Academy. We see some of the students, like Carr, on their hands, throwing up, saying they can't believe they ran out of all the potions they brought immediately. Ein jumps off the ship, saying they're going to have to cross that lake all the time, so they better get used to it quickly, and now they can head to the entrance ceremony. Now we are taken to the Electra training grounds in Lumen Academy, which look like a giant track. We see other students watching the exam, saying they hope there will be some interesting ones. Ein then says they're going to start the entrance ceremony, telling them to line up by region, with the top scorers at the very front of each row. The headmaster will first say a few words. We then see Callian once more, saying he only has a few words for them all. If they dream of becoming heroes, they always need to put their lives on the line and continuously surpass their limits to move forward. Those who cannot do so do not belong here, as he smashes the table in front of him, showing them that they will break in the process if they don't have what it takes. They all sit there in silence, and he wonders if maybe that was a bit too much. Some of the students start cheering, and he hits them with a SpongeBob quote of "I can't hear you." Some of the teachers cry, saying the longer they teach here, the more the grand image of the swordmaster gets shattered. One of the teachers announces there will now be a speech from the freshman representative. We see the top scorers of each region surprised when they call out Leo's name. When Leo looks up, he sees Albai standing on the stage, and he wonders if he was recommended by him. As Albai smiles at him, Leo walks up on the stage, grabbing a book, and says to the professors and seniors that the freshmen will now enter Lumen as proud members of its ranks. Some of the students say they've never even heard of this dude, asking why the representative is not one of the top scorers. Leo sees Duran's eyes and can tell he's annoyed. He closes the book, thanking them. The teacher thanks him, saying now they want to know his goals as the freshman representative. Leo smiles, wondering if they want him to rile up those who almost qualified for the position instead of them. The teachers say this freshman rep is well behaved and isn't a bad model student either. It seems like it's going to be a calm mentor ceremony. Only for Leo to tell them, if they want his spot, then they should try to come take it from him. We see varying emotions from the top scorers. Abad and Celia can't believe he said that, whereas Chen is surprised, and both Walden and Duran still just look pissed. Leo tells them regardless of who they are, he will accept every challenge in earnest. Sometime later in the day, they finally make it to the dormitory. Before they head in, a man tells them that starting tomorrow, for about a week, exploratory classes will begin. During this time, no matter what their desired major is, they can take whatever class they want, and through the process, they will pick the 3 subjects they want to major in. He tells them all to go to bed early so they won't be late for their first class. We see all the students heading into the dorm. We see Leo has room 302, and Carr is his neighbor, saying that it seems like they are side by side, and he's excited for tomorrow, telling him to sleep well. Leo says he'll see him tomorrow and then heads into his room, plopping onto the bed and starts to think about what he wants from Lumen. Leo says this will be his start to finding out what he wants, as he gives us a visual metaphor. We see there is a grand pillar of rock amidst a vast library, almost as if the stars were the ceiling. Leo says that this is what he wants to find here as it's none other than his hero record he's looking for. We are then taken to the cafeteria the next day as Carr tells Leo he wants to eat with him. Leo says okay and Carr takes a seat beside him as does someone else who slams their food across the table. Leo asks who he is and we see Duran asking him if he meant what he said yesterday in the speech. Leo says that he guesses his words were quite provocative and he supposes that's true if a stranger comes and picks a fight like that. Duran asks him if he knows who he is, saying he is the Central Region captain. Both Leo and Carr ignore his ass and just keep munching. What the hell is Carr eating? Duran starts to get pissed and we see a yellowish aura start to get released and when Carr looks up he is surprised as their table was sent flying through the air with Duran's kick including all of their food. Leo jumps out of his seat using his fork to get all of his food in Carr's. Just like scene out of Spider-Man except he's reconstructed his food into a cheeseburger. Duran still just looks pissed and Leo says carelessly throwing away such precious food is unforgivable and Duran says he'll pull him down from that high horse right now. And he can't stand someone weaker than him acting so cocky. We then see Ein put his hand on Duran's shoulder but also Leo's as he is now in between both of them and he says that he can't believe what they are doing and Duran just wonders when he got here while Leo swears nervously. Duran says fighting on the first day of Lumen is pretty serious asking if they can handle what's about to come and then jumps to the exploratory class specifically the night department as we see the students outside with Duran they then call out to him saying it's almost time for class to start while Celia just looks around wondering where Leo is. We then see his hand on the doorframe as he and Duran are both gassed out, Duran being more so. Celia runs over asking what happened. Leo glances over at Duran who walks away annoyed and Leo seems a little refreshed about the entire situation. Ein says that since everybody is here he's going to start the class and he introduces himself once more to them all saying he's the one in charge of their first year night studies and Duran is just staring holes straight through Leo's head and Carr wonders if they're starting a war on the first day. Ein says that the 3 powers derived from mana are magic energy, soul energy, and aura and among these aura is the most difficult to handle asking if anybody knows why. Celia says that aura loses its mana fluidity during the conversion process. He says that's correct and while magic energy and soul energy use mana in its natural state aura absorbs mana and processes it to suit the body. He then starts to release a chilly aura and he asks them if any of them can explain how they use the aura accumulated in their bodies. Celia says that she thinks it just comes out after using some force but Leo says that you can utilize aura's power by burning mana. Ein says that's correct and then asks him if he knows what the most important thing is when burning mana. Leo says stamina, as we see Duran is still gassed out, and Ein tells him that's impressive, asking if he's studied aura before. He says that he hasn't, and Ein smirks, saying to think someone who hasn't even properly studied managed to grasp its essence is very interesting. He says he wants to put the theory aside for now and they should all move their bodies for a bit. As we see him put the aura right under his feet, and all the students start watching in amazement as he's soaring through the sky. Using aura step, One Piece fans would recognize it as Geppo, and he says that it's the basic principle to concentrate your aura's power into your legs. He uses it to forcibly descend himself, saying that its potential applications are endless. Now that class has started, we see some students struggling to use the aura step while others are practicing their combat. Celia does at first try telling Leo that she'll tell him how to do it if he calls her sister acting all prideful, and he says that there's no need as it shouldn't be that hard. Ein then notices Duran is still staring at Leo and he's anxiously biting his thumb, and Ein smirks, telling everybody that surely they know there was a small commotion this morning. Chelsea wonders what's going on while Carr weasels his way close to her, saying that he'll tell her all about it, and she asks what happened. Ein then tells Duran and Leo to come forward, and he asks Duran what it is that's made him so angry. Duran says that he wasn't angry, and Ein tells him to take it to the track, telling them to do a one-on-one running competition for the class representative spot, and in this match they are allowed to use aura without any restrictions. Duran's surprised by this as he thinks he's going to have a serious advantage. Right before it starts, we see Carr trying to finesse everybody, telling them to place their beds. On one side they have the genius of the House of Moira and the lineage of a hero, and that Duran Moira is the master of lightning aura, versus the dark horse coming from the outskirts and the mysterious man who surpassed the captains of every region and became the freshman representative. All of the other students say that from what they could tell earlier, it seems like he can't even use aura step, and they talk about what he did yesterday, saying they can't stand him and that all the captains have proven themselves while Leo hasn't. Ein tells them the first to cross the finish line will win, and no matter who does, they have to gracefully accept the results, as that is what one calls chivalry. He tells them to get ready, and Celia says, speaking realistically, it's impossible for Leo to win, but that he's always exceeded everybody's expectations. Ein then tells them to go, as we see Leo and Duran off to the races as Duran is using his lightning aura. Duran looks back, telling Leo he's going to head out first, calling him a rookie. All the other students say as expected of Duran, calling him cool. On the other hand, they say Leo is quite bad, as we see him starting to use aura on his feet. They claim that Leo becoming the representative was a scam. Chelsea, being the sole cheerleader, tells Leo to do his best. Meanwhile, Duran has already reached the halfway point, and Carr realizes this is bad, noting that Leo is quite a bit behind. As Leo is running, something catches his attention, and he stops in his tracks, running towards the wall. Celia asks what the hell he's doing. We then see him starting to use his aura step, quickly climbing all the way up towards the stands in the arena. He turns around, looking at Duran, who is already past the halfway point. Leo starts to imbue even more aura into the ground, crushing it beneath him, and pushes off with extreme force, causing an explosion. Duran, surprised, watches as Leo uses the momentum of the explosion to dart forward, passing him and even starting to trash talk him. As Leo crosses the finish line, he slows himself down, leaving Duran shocked. Leo smirks at him while the other students are in disbelief. They say that was no joke, Duran should be the fastest among the first years, and to think that Leo beat him. They note they'd heard he hadn't even learned aura step. Celia explains that it wasn't aura step, it was Phoenix step. Carr and Chelsea are hella happy about Leo taking the W, while Ein starts analyzing the race. Ein acknowledges that Duran used his specialty lightning aura to increase his speed, which was truly mind-blowing. However, although Leo was slower, he demonstrated superior control, gathering and focusing his aura on his feet to create a single formidable aura step. Ein is impressed, calling it an amazing application. Leo tells Duran that it was a great match and mentions that if it had been a long-distance race, the result might have been different. Duran, not wanting to be friendly, tells him to get lost. Ein starts to think that among the current generation's disciples, a true hero might finally be born. Chelsea quickly runs over to Leo, saying she really wants to train with him. Carr, feeling overshadowed, wonders why she's only focusing on Leo when he's standing right there with her. Then Carr changes the subject, suggesting they all go to a cafe and he'll pay. Leo apologizes but tells them to go without him as he walks out of the area. Carr asks where he's going, and Leo replies that he's going to listen in on summoning classes. Celia sighs, saying that there's no telling what's on Leo's mind. On his way, Leo ponders something that's been bothering him. He wonders why the Fairy King gave him his pledge as a reward. Rewards from the hero's world are typically tied to the strength of the world's owner, yet the reward he received is related to summoning. Teacher Albai is a pure magician with no ties to summoning, so normally, Leo would have received a magic-related ability. Additionally, to make a contract with a fairy, one must go to fairyland, making the reward useless for now. We then hear a woman asking him if he's here for the classes, and when he turns, he sees the East Captain, Chen, saying that it's nice to meet him. He tells her it's nice to meet her too, calling her by her full name, and she says just to call her Xia instead. She says that she was sure Mr. Leo was a student of the Night Division, and she didn't expect he'd have an interest in summoning. He says that he's interested in spiritualism, and she says that they're going to see each other a lot more often. Leo then asks if she could show what spirit she's contracted with. She then summons a little water spirit and asks if Leo could show his too, and he says he hasn't made a contract. Xia then tells him that if he needs help, then to feel free to call her, and she'll give him some advice regarding spirit summoning. He says that he'll do that and asks how old she is, and she says that she's 17 years old, and says that she knows he's 15, and she saw him talking with Celia. He says she looks really young, and she even looks younger than Chelsea. Xia starts staring at him and says he definitely thought of something rude just now, and he says no. She says she was deeply impressed by his match against Duran, and he's just surprised she saw it. She says she was in the crowd, and that one day she really hopes he'll accept her challenge too, and he laughs, saying of course, and she smiles. At the exploratory class for the summoning division, we see everybody meeting up on a field or up on the hill. We see Walden and another female student both turning back, glaring at Leo and Xia. Leo asks if this is everybody, and Xia says that summoning isn't popular, and he says it makes sense but doesn't think the class would be held here. Then giant wings are seen soaring overhead, causing the students to get scared, as it is a black wyvern, and they wonder where it came from. One of the students falls to the ground, scared, and a woman says it's doing that because it took a liking to him. She says it's nice to meet all of them. She hops off of her dragon and then says she's going to be their summoning teacher for the entirety of this year, and we are introduced to Yura Marin. Some of the students say they wish they could become her summon. Me too bro, me too. In spirit, Dueno makes an appearance, saying that she's a woman who is beauty comparable to Luna and Linzena's, and he can't help but be inspired. Leo calls him a horny old dwarf, saying even death wouldn't stop his homie. We then see the black wyvern against the tree, and Yura tells them that the fact that they're all here must mean they have some talent as summoners. They scream yes. She says it's good that their answer is loud and clear, and they're going to move immediately to the practice area. She then calls for someone named Carlo. A griffin then starts to step forward, as Carlo, her assistant professor, guides it toward them. Yura then tells them that they're going to be riding in groups of 2 and to pick out some griffins. One of the students says it's their first time handling griffins, and they don't know if they can do it. She says it sounds like he's saying he doesn't want to listen to her lesson. If they don't think they can do it, then just leave. She hops on her black wyvern, it then raises its wings, screeching into the air as it soars off. Leo watches it, and Carlo says that now everyone should hurry and follow her. Some of the students start playing with a griffin, saying they're a lot more friendly than they thought they'd be, while others seem to be getting bullied. Xia then walks over, asking if she can partner with Leo, and he tells her to do what she wants. They now start soaring over the ocean as it's a sunny day outside, and they're all enjoying the nice cold breeze while following Yura. They say they didn't expect to be riding a griffin, but it makes sense as they are in Lumen after all. It seems everyone's having a good time. Xia says she was a bit worried, and he's much more gentle than she thought he'd be. Leo says it would still be best to be careful, as griffins are difficult summons to control for first-time riders. She then asks, even though the griffin is this kind, and Leo goes to explain it, but we see Yura take a deep breath as she blows a whistle from in front of the group on the wyvern. All of the griffin's eyes then start to lock in as if they're about to fight, and they extend their talons, and they all start screeching. The students wonder what's going on, saying that they were just listening to them a second ago. Yura asks if they really think they can call themselves students of Lumen Academy when they can't even handle a griffin, telling them to try and control themselves. We see Xia and Leo's griffin acting up, and as she starts to fall, he grabs onto her, saying that griffins have a strong sense of pride, and she should not try to overpower it. She starts to get really flustered, asking him what he's doing as he's holding onto her, and he puts his hands over hers, telling her to follow his lead, as he now starts to command the griffin to fly forward, even passing by Yura and Carlo, who says that's not bad at all. Yura asks Carlo if the first-class representative is an applicant for the night major, and Carlo says yes. She asks if he might have a griffin back home since he's so good at riding one, and Carlo says that he's not from a noble household that would own a griffin. She then starts to laugh, saying that's pure talent, and it seems that she has found herself a little gem. They finally make it to the practice grounds, which is the island of summons, as some of the students are straight vomiting on the beach. Leo starts walking around and spots a piece of fruit, saying that one should be good enough. As he goes to get it, a feather then drops onto it, and he wonders what this is. Xia asks what's wrong, and Leo says it's nothing. He then takes the feather off and feeds the good boy. Yura says that from now on, they will be taking a practical exam, and they ask what kind of class would give an exam on the first day, since it's still the exploratory class period. Yura says that compared to the other two majors, the paths they walk are much further, asking if anybody here really doesn't know that. For summoning, just having control over mana is not enough, and in order to make a contract with a spirit, you need spirit affinity. In order to control your summons, your taming ability is necessary, and this is why the number of summoner heroes is much lower than that of the other two classes. However, compared to the other heroes, summoners who rise to become one accomplish way more than the other two could ever hope for. Asking if that's not why they are on this path. The students say that's right, and then we see a woman walking forward, asking what kind of exam it is. It's the girl who was glaring at him earlier with Walden, and we are introduced to Eliza Hergen. She is from a renowned summoner hero family in the north. Yura says that just like the name of the island suggests, that's what it is. A summon is a form of weapon for summoners, and they will be testing their taming ability. The contents are simple: tame a summon in the forest and bring it back, and after doing that and making a contract, that summon will be theirs. All the students get excited and start running into the forest, saying as expected. Eliza then calls out to Leo, and when he turns, she says the rumors that he defeated Duran are spreading, asking if she can look forward to seeing him stay in the summoner class. Walden and Xia are also wondering what he's about to say, and he heads off, saying that he's doing the best he can. We see Eliza starting to make an annoyed face. Yura says that it seems those guys will become the key members of the first years, and watches as all the students do their best. Leo passes by a guy talking to a deer, and another guy talking to a ferret. They're wondering why he's going so deep into the forest, but they decide to let him be, because if he fails, he'll definitely just return back to the night major. They talk among themselves, wondering if he thinks summoning is easy. After Leo heads in a bit, he reaches into his pocket, pulling out the feather from earlier, and starts to release his fiery aura, causing the feather to spark and ignite, and eventually burn down. He says it's just as he thought. He hears a loud sound behind him, and of course we don't get to see what it is yet. As it jumps to somewhere else, not even close to the school, there is breakfast being made. We hear his mother asking if Dade thinks that Leo will be doing fine, and he says that it's only his first day of school, asking if she's already worried. She says that he's probably right, and there's no point in her being so worried. But we see the fire around Leo is starting to grow even larger. She asks what kind of bad thing could possibly happen on day 1, but it turns out that Leo just pulled one of the 3 great summons, a phoenix. The phoenix then wonders if it's just a child of the Zerdinger, saying that they smelled Reyna's flames. Leo asks the phoenix if she knows his mother. She says if that's the case, that means she wasn't wrong. And indeed, if she had a child, he would definitely be around Leo's age. Of course, she knows his mother as she owes Reyna a great debt. We are formally introduced to Farina, one of the 3 mystical summons. The phoenix greets Leo, and Leo greets Farina back, asking what her relationship is to his mother. She says that Reyna saved the life of her summoner, Ellen Lunda. Leo is surprised to hear the name of the hero, Ellen. Farina explains that Ellen was clearing a dungeon in Siren, and she lost all of her comrades and was in danger of losing her own life. Then Reyna came and saved her, and in that process, Reyna lost her blazing aura. If it wasn't for that event, Reyna would surely have reached the seat of the heroes. Leo realizes this is what his mother must have been talking about last time and tells Farina that his mother does not regret what she did at all. Farina laughs, saying that's the kind of knight she was. Leo then asks Farina what she's doing here in Lumen. She says that she can't tell him that but asks if he is not a knight and what he is doing on this island. He says that he's also taking the summoning classes, which startles Farina. She starts to gaze at him, saying that this is fun and that this is none other than fate. She can feel Kyle's soul coming from Leo and says that she can finally repay the debt that she owes his mother, telling him to reach out his hands and take this. As a fire starts to envelop his hand, it turns into an egg. Farina says that this is her child, and one day when he becomes a great summoner, she hopes that they will make a contract together. It's unfortunate for the summoner that was arranged to receive it. Leo asks if it's not possible to do it now. Farina asks what he means, only to be shocked once more. As Leo starts to release his aura, she tells him that he might lose his life and to stop, as we see him trying to make a contract. But then she realizes it might be too late, as his eyes show he is no longer conscious. She says that his willingness to challenge the impossible without flinching reminds her of Reina, and that she bids him luck. When Leo opens his eyes, what he sees in front of him is a flame with some kind of golden string around it. He reaches his hand out, touching it, only for it to start consuming his entire body. He screams out in pain, saying that the heat makes it impossible to breathe, and this must be the phoenix flame. As a result of burning their bodies to emit powerful flames, they endure this pain every single day, and they are beings that live, regenerating their burning flesh for eternity. Now he understands the phoenix's pain, he will join them in their journey, enduring it. The fire around Leo then starts to swirl more violently as the egg begins to crack. He is then fully conscious once more. As the egg begins to absorb all of the heat he was emanating, floating up into the air, Farina asks if he succeeded, and Leo says he did, but we see he's gassed out. Farina then starts laughing, calling him a genius, saying he will end up as the world's greatest summoner. As the egg begins to crack open, she congratulates him on succeeding in their contract and says that the child's name is Fiora. What a cute little bird. Farina then turns into a human, saying that she trusts him with her kid, and Leo wonders if it's really a phoenix, since it looks like a little chicken. Fiora tilts her head and then chirps, and he says it's definitely a chicken. Back to Yura, everybody's showing her their summons, and of course, you can tell she's an animal lover. She then asks Carlo what time it is, and Carlo says there are 5 minutes left, and only 4 of the students have not returned. Yura then turns to see a big bear barreling at them, and it's none other than Xia, who asks if they're not done yet. The bear looks super proud and says it's pretty respectable that she tamed an aqua bear cub. Then a shadow flies over her, and when she gets off her bear, she looks up to see Walden has actually brought back a shadow crow. Yura says that's pretty impressive, as even some in her family find that difficult to tame, and reminds him that he hasn't made a contract with it. She says that's still fine, as it's more than enough. Then the other students are screaming as we see a giant snake with Eliza on its head slithering towards Yura. She says that she went ahead and contracted it since they don't have one in her family, and Yura says that a gorgon snake is pretty excellent. Carlo then tells her that the time is up, and it's perfect timing as he now sees Leo. As they all turn, watching him walk out of the forest, they see little Fiora on his head sitting all proudly. They start laughing, asking what kind of dumbass would go out there and tame a chicken. But Yura immediately recognizes what is up and says there's no way. She starts pogging out of her gourd, saying that son of a bitch really did something crazy as he tamed a phoenix. Later that day, back at the academy, we see Leo standing in front of a door, readjusting his tie, and then he knocks on the door. We hear Yura telling him to come in, as we see her leaning against her desk. He says he heard that she was looking for him, and she tells him to go ahead and take a seat. She then tells him that was her first time ever seeing a baby phoenix. In fact, she didn't even know there was a phoenix on the island, and a freshman contracting with one? That's unprecedented in the academy's history. We see Leo getting startled as she starts to lean in real close to him, saying that she knows what he really is. It looks like she might be going to prison. Leo audibly gulps, and Yura says that he's a summoning genius and hugs him. She says that she wanted to praise what he's achieved, but she thinks the fact that he's made a contract with a phoenix should be kept a secret for now. If it's revealed, things are going to get very noisy. She tells him that on the day the exploratory classes end, he needs to make sure to choose summoning as his major, as he has the talent to become a summoning hero who will be remembered for the ages. Sometime later at the academy, we see Chloe yawning while she walks through the hallway, and we hear Car tell her that she's going to tear her mouth doing that. She turns embarrassed, and he says that she seems tired. She says that she stayed up late reading magic books. Leo reaches into his pocket, telling her that she dropped this, and she recalls bumping into him the day school started. She gets a little embarrassed and then thanks him. Car then asks what Leo is doing at the magic classes, and he says that since they're still in the exploratory period, he wanted to attend as many as possible. Car says that since he's only interested in magic, this is the only thing he attends, and then tells him that the ice woman next to him is Chloe. As she's glaring at him, Car says that it's a bit cold here. He gets up, saying he's going to move to the back, but a giant ice wall forms in front of him, stopping him from doing anything. Chloe tells him to follow her to the front seats, saying that since it seems he's interested in the class, she'll help him. She forcibly drags him away. Car might actually have one in the bag. We then hear Chelsea calling out to Leo, much to his surprise. He turns around to see both her and Abad waving at him. Then, the main door opens, and he turns. We hear someone saying it's nice to meet everybody attending the magic classes, and he says that he's going to be their magic teacher for the next year. He introduces himself as Linhers. He says before starting today's exploratory class, then he snaps his finger as a magic circle forms. Papers start to fly all around the room, landing in front of each and every one of the students. Lin says they are going to take a magic theory exam, and they're all surprised that there's a test on the first day of the exploratory class. It turns out every one of these classes, besides the night one, has had one. Lin tells them all that students who don't meet a certain standard cannot attend his class, and if they are a Lumen student, this much should be the standard. When they finish the exam, they are to hand it to his assistant, Anna. We see her waving, telling everybody that she'll take their exams when they finish. Leo wonders if this is really the current magic trend, asking why this shit is so complex. It's like the new math they are teaching kids. As everybody starts doing their best, writing everything they can down, the hourglass continues draining more and more. After a bit, they said it was easier than they thought, but they don't know the answer to the last question as they solved everything but that. Leo is having the exact opposite experience, as he only solved a single question. He realizes he should have learned more about modern magic before coming here. Nervously, he turns in his paper to Anna. As he heads out, he resolves to study magic on his own. Now that the clock has reached 0, Lin says that for the past 100 years, magic seems to have greatly evolved. Magic that once required perfect understanding can now be used by memorizing the conditions. He snaps his fingers as the grades start going back to all of the students. He says that this development has worsened the overall level of magicians. He raises his hand into the air, and a bright light forms on his palm. It then expands up into the ceiling, creating something that is really pretty and looks like a solar system. Lin says this is the essence of the magic he himself has created. He created it from finish to start, and he wants them to become someone capable of researching and making their own magics, which is why he made them take this test in the first place. There were 49 questions worth 1 point each based on simple memorization, and then the last question is worth 51 points. It analyzes the true essence of magic, and he hopes everybody here can become a magician capable of solving it. Chelsea says no wonder that was the only question she couldn't solve, but she wonders if Leo gave up since he's no longer in his chair. She wanted to attend classes with him. Then we see Anna run up to Lin, telling him that there's actually a student who solved the 50th question, and he's surprised. He starts laughing really loudly and starts looking around the students, wondering where he is, as there's someone for the first time with a perfect score. Lin tells them to stand up, asking who it is, and Anna tells him that it wasn't a perfect score. Lin says it seems that a few other answers were missed due to spending so much time solving the last question. It's too bad, but he tells whoever it was to step forward. Anna clarifies that the student only solved the last question. Lin is then surprised and asks what his name is. Anna says that it's the student Leo Plove. They then tell Leo to stand up, and Car and Chloe say he doesn't even seem to be here. Chelsea says that he actually left after finishing the test, and Lin asks why he would do that. Then it jumps to a cafe, as we see Celia laughing her ass off that he only solved one question. She says he got a chicken in the summoning class and only solved one question in the magic class. She says that surely he realizes that he is boofing this and that if he's a knight major, he should just focus on his swordsmanship. Leo then asks if she wants to do some stamina training with him, and she immediately says no. Then we hear Lin saying that he sees now. Leo turns around, surprised. Lin asks if he's the one who made fun of his class, asking why he left after answering one question. He asks if Leo thought the rest were so easy they weren't even worth answering, as Lin is giving off some crazy psycho vibes. Leo says there's a misunderstanding, and he thought he didn't pass the test. He says every question except the last one was too hard, so he couldn't solve any of them. Lin did not expect this at all, and Leo says he only studied magic on his own by reading old books, and that's why he wasn't sure about any of the modern ones. Lin starts to understand and picks Leo up into the sky, all happy, and then sets him back down, leaving Leo completely confused. Lin can't control himself, telling Leo to follow him for a moment. Lin immediately starts dragging Leo away, and Celia asks what the magical professor is doing. Anna then rushes in, asking if she saw Lin or if he did anything strange. Celia says he was here minutes ago, but he suddenly grabbed Leo and dragged him away. Anna wonders what the hell he's doing this time, calling him crazy. We then see Lin erasing some chalk on the board while also writing more stuff down, and he tells Leo to solve these equations for him. Lin says if Leo didn't solve the final question out of pure luck, he must already have his own established magic system in his mind. He tells Leo to show him, saying he'll see straight through whatever he's got. Moments later, Leo tells him that he solved it all. Lin is completely dumbfounded, asking if he really solved all those questions in his head, and Leo says, kinda. Lin's eyes start to light up, and he exclaims, finally. It then jumps to the hallway as we see Albai walking down it, with Lin hauling absolute cheeks looking super happy, while Albai just looks depressed, wondering what Lin is doing. Lin grabs onto Albai's leg, telling him that he's so glad and thanking him for everything. Albai makes him float into the air, saying this isn't his first time seeing Lin act out, but he's going too far today. Lin insists that Leo is a genius in magic and that the student Albai recommended is a complete genius. Albai is confused, saying that Leo dude is a knight. Lin declares that Leo must become a sorcerer at all costs, and he won't let his talent rot away wielding metal sticks. Albai throws Lin back down, and Anna runs in, catching him. Lin thanks her, and Anna looks really pissed, saying they need to return to class now and that she's going to kill him one day. On cue, Leo walks around the hallway, and Albai spots him and smiles. Leo wonders what Albai is doing, saying that sorcerers haven't changed at all with time, and they're all complete psychos. 1 week later, at the end of the exploratory classes, we see Leo on the roof reading a book. The book is titled Is Kyle the Hero of the Beginning Really a Fraud? He closes it and then sits on the ledge, thinking about it. We then see 3 people running down the hallway, banging on Kallian's door. It's Ein, Lin, and Yura, saying that this is unbelievable and telling Kallian to take a look at this. Leo plans to major in every single one. While Yura and Lin are fighting in the back, Ein says that Leo has to be a knight, but that's not his point. This is unprecedented in the entire academy. Kallian laughs, saying that this reminds him of that fictional hero. They ask what he's talking about. Kallian says the 5th grade hero, also known as the hero of the beginning, Kyle, is the only master of all classes in history. Back at the training grounds, we see Chelsea and Celia running, and Car wonders what they're doing on a weekend. Leo says that Chelsea asked him to train her. Car asks why they're running without their weapons, and Leo says there's something more important than weapons. Celia tells him that it's their stamina. We see she's gassed out, and Chelsea's also gassed out but says stamina is the most important aspect of a battle mage. That's why they're running. She tells Car to move over as she wants to sit beside Leo. She says it's nice to be jogging on a weekend, she's missed this, and she wants to run with Leo too. Leo asks if she's serious, and Celia spits out her water. Chelsea calls her gross, asking what's wrong with her. Leo says if she's going to run with him, they've got to do it properly. Celia stands up, saying she already said she's not doing it. Car asks what's going on, saying they seem to be really close. He thought they were dating at first. Celia then tells him that they're related and that this isn't Alabama. Car and Chelsea are surprised, as they didn't realize that Leo is asserting her, but Celia says not exactly as there are some familial circumstances. Leo then sits up, asking if they should do this for real, while Chelsea's happy. Car says he's going to go explore the city, and when Celia tries to go with him, Leo drags her away. Car wonders why there are no dignified nobles in his life. It is now the class assignment day, and we see all the students wondering what they're going to get. Leo heads into class 1 to 5, and Car waves him over. He asks if Leo already knew he was in class 5, and Car laughs, saying there's nothing he doesn't know. Leo says that Chelsea's also here, and we see she's having some severe DOMs from working out. Car asks what Leo made her do, and Leo says it was only the basics. Chelsea says she's never doing it again. Some students then start mocking them, saying that class 5 is the class of anguish, and they wonder how many of them will remain after the first semester, calling them all pitiful. A man then asks what they made pitiful, saying that's the way they seem in his eyes. When they turn, they seem scared as he starts to ask them if they would agree or not. He then tells the students to make a human chair, and we are introduced to the professor of their class, who also has the nickname of the Wailing Wall, Herod Edmund. We see the students do exactly that as he walks forward. He says it's nice to meet them, calling everybody worthless, saying this is the class for failures who scored the lowest among the incoming students. He's sure they've already heard the rumors about him, asking if anybody here knows why he chose to assign himself as the teacher to this class. Car asks if it's to help them improve their grades, and Herod says that is an answer typical of someone who ranked dead last, and he expects no different from Car. He asks if no one in this inferior class understands the duty of a Lumen Academy student. Chelsea says it's to capture the hero's world through practice missions. Herod says that's correct, but all he sees are faces of people who would die immediately after entering a hero's world. He says it would be better to expel the pathetic beings who would only hold back their comrades as they die ahead of time. Which is why he's decided to be in charge of this class and the reason he is called the Wailing Wall. He then spots Leo in the back, saying at least that guy will probably survive. He tells everybody to change into their exercise clothes and head to the drill grounds as it's time for the combat studies class. As they are out there and we see them all dressed up in their uniforms, Herod then starts putting up an umbrella and a chair, saying that he's going to begin the class which is supposed to fix the rotten mindsets they've developed. He asks what they think will save them in real life when they could die at any moment. One of the students says it would be her fellow comrades, and we are introduced to a woman named Nella Carvin, who has a healing attribute aura. Herod tells them no, it's their own ability. When they hone their own skill, making it shine through all kinds of danger, then they can start thinking about helping comrades. But he asks Nella if she's confident in her abilities to protect her comrades. Another woman raises her hand, saying that she's confident in doing so. Herod laughs, telling her he wants to look at her capabilities as a magical knight, and he tells her to create a fireball. We see the student named Eliana Leiden, who is a dual class, doing exactly that. Herod asks if that is all, saying with that fireball he doubts she could even kill an ant. Then she puts her other hand atop it, saying that she can just inject more mana into it as she now has 2 giant fireballs even scorching the earth below her. Herod says not only did she increase it, but it doubled in size and that's pretty impressive. Asking her if she wants to try hitting this little fellow with her fireball, as we see him sticking out his finger and a fairy spirit forms. It leaps directly towards Eliana and then taps her nose and starts laughing, which pisses her off. She starts to throw her fireballs trying to hit it, but the little fairy is actually really quick and easily evades them all. Herod asks what's the point of increasing the number to 2 if you can't even hit anything with it. Asking if she finally feels it, that what they all lack is the ability to use their skills effectively. They need to hone their abilities and push past their limits, asking if they've already forgotten this. And until they catch this sylph, this class will not end, and they need to draw out everything they have. Leo says that Herod's words may be harsh, but everything he said is true, asking if he should give it a try as well. We see Herod watching him, saying that he's excited to see whether Leo's full of shit like the fictional hero Kyle or if he really does want to walk the path of being a master of all classes. While the little spirit is dashing around making everybody seem like fools, we then see Leo starting to imbue aura into his feet as he starts to dash forward at crazy speeds, passing everybody by, determined to catch the sylph. Chelsea wonders why the sylph is so damn fast, and Carr asks how they're meant to catch her. Then they both spot Leo running as he's even using aura step now, floating through the air chasing after the sylph, who seems to be having a good time since she gets to embarrass all these kids. Then she notices Leo behind her and evades his first strike. Leo smiles and starts to imbue aura into his hand as he shoots out some kind of aura that starts to chase the sylph. Then a yellow blur dashes straight in front of him as it's none other than Duran, who grabs onto the sylph and turns back to Leo while holding onto her. A man then begins to clap, saying that it seems that class 1 is going to teach them a thing or two. We see the homeroom professor of their class named Sejin. Herod asks if that means he's going to teach his class instead and starts sipping his drink. We learn that Sejin was second in the graduating class vote, whereas Herod was number 1, and Sejin does not like that. Carr says this might be the clash of 2 pillars, and Leo asks what he means. Carr says the 2 of them have worked at Lumen for over 20 years, and from what he's heard, Professors Ein, Yura, and Lin were apprentices of these 2. Nella asks how he knows all of that, and he immediately acts embarrassingly, saying that he's really quick with his information, and Chelsea is just cringing. Sejin starts laughing, saying that he didn't know Herod was cooking up. He then summons an orb in his hand, saying he'll find out soon enough as he wants to request a competition between classes 1 and 5. As for the event, they can use Lumen's historic ball sport called Baestra. Herod is surprised, saying as expected, Sejin is a genius, and learning through actual experience is the best. Sejin tells him that his class will probably win though, and Herod says he doesn't really care, and Sejin can proceed with teaching the class then. Sejin wonders how he keeps losing the graduating class vote to this dude. Then Herod yells, telling everybody that he's going to give them an opportunity to practice their skills and there will be a Baestra match with class 1. He stands up, saying all of them will be expelled if they lose. Everybody is surprised to hear this. Nella asks if he's serious, saying it's only their first class today. Eliana also reminds him that class 1 has 3 captains. Herod then says that they should try even harder to overcome their limits. Besides, what's there to be worried about when their freshman representative is already in their class? He tells Leo to choose 6 representatives who will go with him to Baestra. Leo can tell that this is clearly a test, but Professor Herod isn't looking at him because he dislikes him. There are kids who have lost their spirit after this 1 week of being at Lumen Academy, and it isn't hard to tell why. Leo realizes that Professor Herod probably wants him to lead the kids of Class 5, who are already acting like they've lost, and that this has to be some sort of breakthrough to raise Class 5's morale. We see Duran and Celia in Class 1. In Class 5, we see Chelsea and Carr. Leo asks why they're all so scared. Chelsea says that he might not have heard about Bastra before, but it's a combat sport and a time-honored tradition here at Lumen. Leo says he thought it was just a ball game, and Carr says that while it might seem that way, in reality, it's a very dangerous ball game. Celia then calls out to Chelsea, asking why she looks so scared, teasing her about already coming to terms with her defeat. Chelsea retorts, asking who she thinks is scared, saying she'd never lose to a Zerdinger. Leo wraps his hand around Chelsea and Carr, saying that their class will not lose to Class 1. Celia says she's going to show him the fruits of her special training. We then see Chloe saying that she will not lose this time. Sejin says that participants from each class should proceed to the arena, and Leo asks who's going to go with him. Chelsea and Aliana both step forward, saying they need to put Class 1 in their place. Aliana declares that if losing means expulsion, she'll use spite to win, if that's what it takes. She'll show Professor Herod what she's capable of. Both Nella and another boy from the class step forward. Leo says the last spot is definitely Carr's. Carr asks why, but before he can even answer, Leo tells Sejin that Class 5 is ready. Sejin says good and then lightly tosses the ball into the air, only to throw it up hella high. Everybody watches in anticipation, wondering what's going to happen straight out from the start, while others seem more confident that they're going to win. Sejin announces the start of the match, and both Duran and Leo leap through the air using their aura. Duran's longer reach allows him to get the ball before Leo, and he immediately lands back on the ground, using his lightning aura. Sejin says that Class 1 takes the first move. Leo jumps back to his side, telling one of his classmates, who we learn is named Tide, to explain the rules to him. Tide says the rules of Bastra are simpler than he'd think. He needs to infuse the ball with aura and shoot it into the goal without using his hands or feet. The first team to score 11 points wins. We learn that Tide Marcoa is actually part of the summoning department, also now that Hogwarts joke from earlier hits harder. Somebody yells, telling them to get ready, as we see Duran clenching his fist with his lightning aura sparking. Carr prepares to block the goal. Duran punches the ball forward, sending it flying straight toward Leo. Leo evades it to the side as it bounces off the ground beneath him, cracking the floor, and goes straight into the goal behind Carr. Leo lands, keeping his eye on the ball. Everybody from Class 1 cheers for Duran, while Class 5 looks defeated. Tide says it seems the professor is going to expel all of them, and Leo asks how they're meant to get possession of the ball. Tide says there are 3 ways to do it: when the ball goes out of bounds during the opponent's turn, when they catch the ball, or when. But before Tide can finish explaining, Nella yells, telling them to dodge. Leo and Tide both turn around as the ball hits Eliana straight in the chest. Celia mocks them, asking what they're yapping about and saying they need to focus on the match. Tide says that you can't directly attack or block opposing players, and just now, that was the 3rd way, is if someone is incapacitated on your team. The only way to attack them is with the ball itself. Leo thanks him for the explanation, picks up the ball, and says now it's his turn. On the board for the match status, we see that Eliana is now listed as incapacitated. There are a couple of people whose names we've never seen on Class 1, such as Howell, Ruth, and Kane, and they'll come into play when the time comes. The teachers are watching, and Sejin is lost in thought, saying players who wield highly destructive fire attributes possess an overwhelming advantage in Bastra. Among the human houses, the flames of Zerdinger are the most powerful of them all. Sejin says he still accepted it, even though he knew Celia was in his class, and he doesn't know what Herod's up to, but it'll be incredibly hard for him to win. Herod yawns, and Sejin tells him to try talking like a normal human. Herod asks if he remembers his first pupil, the kid from the house of Zerdinger. Sejin says of course, asking how he could forget the Empress of Bastra. He's talking about Reyna, and Herod says that the child of that very Empress is in his class. Sejin is surprised by this. Back to the other students, they're already accepting defeat, asking how they even got into Lumen Academy. I'm wondering the same damn question. They say they can't believe it's going to end so easily but are immediately surprised by fire. Celia says it seems like Leo's finally made up his mind. As Leo unleashes his Phoenix Breath aura, Celia yells, telling everyone to be careful for the next attack. Leo rears his fist back and throws the ball directly toward the goal. As it starts hurtling toward it, we see a giant ice wall as Chloe blocks it. It looks like she actually did it, and she says that as long as she's here, scoring will be impossible. Leo corrects her, saying she means possible as he's already standing directly behind her. Leo then leaps into the air as we still see the ball on fire in the ice wall, and he punches the ball, sending it flying and shattering the ice wall, going straight into the goal. Sejin says that his battle IQ is nuts, and Herod just looks smug. The crowd starts cheering for Leo, and Sejin says he sees now that this is where the game will really start. Celia comes in with her turn to try to get a goal, and Carr blocks it with an earth wall. Chelsea then retaliates, sending a ball of her own. Sometime later, we see Tide get hit in the stomach by Duran's ball, and somebody from Class 1 we've not been introduced to gets hit by Leo. Chloe then prepares another attack, but we don't get to see it. Instead, we see Duran charging up the ball, getting ready to go for his goal. He throws it directly towards the goal. Carr spots it as it starts to zigzag back and forth towards him. He sticks out his hand, grabbing onto it as he allows himself to be electrocuted to stop the goal. He manages to land on his feet and laughs, saying his mana is already plummeting and he'll leave the rest to Leo. Both Chelsea and Aliana take him out of the field. The score is 10-10, and it's Leo versus Duran, Celia, and Chloe. Leo picks up the ball, and the students realize they're at too much of a disadvantage with only a 1 versus 3. Chloe says she might have lost in the magic theory exam, but this time she won't lose, as we see her making multiple clones of herself. Leo crouches down, and both Celia and Duran say they're ready. A wind attribute is then seen on Leo's feet as he vanishes in front of all of their eyes. They're surprised, saying they can't believe he's this fast. His magic also leaves clones of himself. He dashes past Celia, and she says he's not even thinking of attacking, he's only focusing on scoring. Chloe wonders where the real one is, saying that an illusion spell is shallow. Then we see she's completely surprised as she now gets to see what his magic truly looks like. The world sure does look different in the eyes of a magician. She's so surprised that she just sits there as Leo runs past her. She feels like a frog in a well, wondering how he's using the magic of the stars as that's the magic for the elves. Leo scores the goal, making Class 5 the winner of the Baestra match, and everybody starts chanting Leo's name. Students start crying, hugging each other, saying they were so scared to go straight back home and didn't want to be kicked out. Sejin asks what they're talking about, and Herod says that it was just his motivation. Whereas Duran, Celia, and Chloe all seem depressed as hell, Sejin sighs and walks over, asking Chloe if she's angry she's lost. He says once the match is over, regardless of the result, she must salute her opponent as he helps her stand up. He says they all worked well together to try and secure Class 1's victory, and those who cheered for their friends and those who gave it their all in the arena are all happy, so they should stand their ground and be proud. The students are surprised that Sejin's actually such a nice guy, and Herod just mocks him, calling him a loser and telling him to go ahead and wrap things up. Sejin wants to kill him. Sejin then starts to give a speech, saying both classes have done great. Class 1 showed their talent and capabilities, and Class 5 didn't give up until the end and gave their all despite the challenges. They managed to understand their limits and successfully overcome the situation, and he hopes they're all going to harmoniously work and compete with each other, telling them all to shake hands as we see them doing exactly that. Celia tells Chelsea that she lasted longer than she thought and she thought she'd lose sooner. Chelsea says that's what she wanted to say to her and she was so tough she thought she was a squid. We then see Carr laughing, telling Duran that he won this time, calling him Prince, and Duran doesn't even reply and is just glaring at him. Carr wonders if he made a mistake. Whereas Chloe is holding back her tears, Leo tells her that was an awesome match, and with a bit more experience, she's going to become someone amazing. She asks if he's making fun of her, but based on how genuine he's smiling, she can tell that he's serious and just says that one day she's going to beat him and shakes his hand. A whole month later, we see Carr asking Chelsea and Leo what club they're going to join. Leo says he's going to make his own club, and Carr spits out his food as Chelsea barks at him, asking if he was raised in a barn. Chelsea says if he's going to make one, she's going to join it. Carr asks what kind of club it is, and Leo says it's going to be the Hero Research Society. They ask what he's going to do, and Leo says he wants to investigate more about the forgotten hero of the beginning, Kyle. They say that Kyle isn't forgotten, though, and he's just a fictional character. Carr laughs, saying that nobody will join his club. Chelsea says that this means she might be alone with Leo and immediately takes the chance to say she wants to join. Some students then run to the window, saying that they're back, and Carr says he forgot that it was today. Chelsea asks what he means, and they all walk over to see as well. Car says it's the day that the 5th year students come back after clearing a hero dungeon. We learn that the fragments of the hero records are scattered across the world, and from time to time, they run amok and generate dungeons. These are known as hero dungeons, and the seniors of Lumen are sent out to clear these hero dungeons and retrieve the hero records fragments. They'll leave for at least 2 weeks at a time, and sometimes longer than a month. His mother probably went through similar things as well. Chelsea is then amazed seeing that must be the top of Lumen. And of course, Car clears his throat, explaining who they all are. He says the muscular Easterner at the front is Senior Lee Jamua. The Southerner woman next to him is Senor Torua Yan. And the pale person wearing the hoodie is Senior Ulta. But there's someone else he doesn't see. Someone puts their hand on the back of Leo, and Car says the man standing at the top of Lumen, the student council president, Reese, isn't there. And then when they turn around, Leo's no longer there, and they wonder where he went. We see it's Celia taking him away, and he's asking what's going on, saying this is a bit sudden, and she tells him that there's somewhere he has to go with her. He asks where, and she says they need to go to Lumaria City, as the student council president said he wants to meet him. Leo asks why he's looking for him, and she sighs, saying it seems like he really isn't interested in school-related matters, and he'll see once they're there. They finally make it to a restaurant, and she says she doesn't know why he wanted to be in such a place, and Leo says he's down for it because it smells good here. Then her face lights up, and she runs over, hugging her big brother. And he says it's nice to meet him, and he's heard a lot about him as he's aiming for the all-class, and we are introduced to Reese Serdinger of the Night Division, and he is the current student council president. They start eating their food, and Reese asks if everybody likes it. Leo says yes, but notices Celia is a bit odd, and she says it's her first time eating something like this. She hesitantly puts it into her mouth, and immediately says this shit is gas. He says this is a restaurant he wanted to bring her to once she came to Lumen, and he can't believe that Leo is his aunt's son. He asks if he's met Reina before, and he says he saw her a few times when he was younger, and that she was pretty famous during her school days. Leo asks what she did, and he says she's someone who did many things that became legendary. For example, she said the desserts in the dormitories' restaurants were awful. She gathered all the students and invaded the principal's office. Celia is surprised that their aunt was the protagonist of that famous incident, and they continue yapping and even finish their plates, and Leo says as expected, he's worthy of being called the strongest in Lumen. It seems it's only a matter of time before he becomes a hero. And then Reese asks if they want to go eat dessert. Celia is really happy and says yes, and Reese tells them to wait outside. As he's going to go ahead and pay, as he reaches into his pockets to get his wallet, he looks down at a fragment of something that's resonating and he wonders what it's doing. It then jumps to the classroom as it's completely silent. We hear Eliana asking Professor Herod if he can help her. He tells her to ask whatever pathetic questions she has, and she asks why he hasn't chosen a class representative, and she heard that all the other classes have decided on somebody. Hyde says he's heard that too, and Herod says he completely forgot about that, and tells Leo that he can do it. Leo of course has no reaction, and Eliana asks if that was really all it took. Hyde says that they should choose them democratically through a vote, and then Herod puts a whole stack of paper on his desk, telling the class representative to take these and sort them out. Eliana immediately realizes what's going on and shuts up, accepting that she doesn't want to do any of that. Then over at the intercom, we hear somebody saying that in a few moments they'll be holding the Hero Studies joint class and all first-year students should go to the auditorium, and Leo says that means they should prepare to go. Herod snaps his finger, saying as expected of the class representative, and everybody heads outside. Car then spots somebody from behind, and it's none other than Chloe, who looks absolutely dead. She asks if he has any fatigue recovery potions, and she would like to buy some. He hands her them, and he says those are all he has at the moment. Leo tells her that the year just started and that she seems to be pushing herself too much. She jugs the potions and wipes away her mouth, saying that she's fine, and walks away. Car says that she's the top student in magic theory for a reason, and Chelsea says that she guesses Chloe has no choice but to be anxious as the moment Leo learns the latest magic trends, he might even catch up in the magic theory exam. Car asks what's wrong with being second, and Chelsea asks if he's actually dumb, saying that she's a tower sorcerer, and while she's a battle mage she doesn't care falling behind in theory, but magic investigation and research are the core of the sorcerer's tower, and her pride is at stake, asking Car if he's really a sorcerer at all. Car says of course that he uses magic to live, and he supposes that substance magic is his pride. I feel like this guy is also some reincarnated hero just trying to live a chill life. As they start fighting in the back, Chloe hears them and wonders what's going on, but walks away. Then it jumps to Callion's office as he's wiping a plant. Something then causes him to freeze up, as it turns out that the damaged heroes page has reacted. We then see Reese put the heroes page in front of Callion as he asks if it's true it reacted. Reese says yes, and it's a page that has been damaged to such an extent that it shouldn't have reacted. But it definitely did, and there was no relic around earlier either. Callion asks if it reacted after that, and Reese says that it didn't. Callion then looks at it and says that it seems like he's going to have to look into it further. And since he just returned, he must be tired, telling him to go rest. He then calls in Elena, his assistant, and she asks him what he needs. He tells her to take this to the auditorium, the Hall of Beginnings, as the first year's joint class will start soon. Callion says there are times when fragments as small as this react, and if the one who recorded it in the hero records comes into contact with it, that is what starts the reaction. This might be a page out of Kyle's book. It then jumps to the auditorium room as a woman is telling everybody to please be quiet, and we are introduced to one of the professors named Artane Near. Everybody continues talking over her, and she starts to get pissed, releasing an aura, telling them that if they don't want to get their ass beat, then they need to shut the hell up, asking if they all want to die while showing she's actually a demon. She looks at one of the students specifically, saying that she's going to come down there and kill him, and he shakes his head. She starts screaming, saying that these bastards won't listen. Then she snaps out of it since it's gotten quiet and immediately returns back to being peaceful. She thanks everybody while waving her hands. Some of the kids cry, saying no matter how many times they see it, their professor is too scary. Leo says that she's a spiritualist, and even in his previous life they were hard to come by. Artane says that they'll proceed with the joint hero studies class and says after the appearance of the hero record, the reason why hero clans appeared is as simple as this: to open a hero's world, an object deeply connected or related to that hero is needed. It's easier for a hero's descendant to open a hero's world, and this is why the Lumen Academy, which preserves the hero records, and these families share a deep relationship. Although it's all a bunch of political nonsense, she should say it's a relationship between a key and a treasure chest. Leo seems interested while Car is asleep. Bro is definitely a returner. Elena then enters as Artane continues, asking if everyone now understands why hero studies are important. She says that it's because it allows them to find clues to clear a hero's world or learn more about them. As they approach senior year, they'll choose a hero to inherit strength from and try clearing that hero's pages. Elena then walks up holding the page from earlier, and Artane goes to reach for it, saying it is a hero fragment that the 5th year students of Lumen have returned. As she shows everyone, they all seem really excited. Then she goes to open it a little bit just to tease them, immediately closing it, saying before they can experience the fragment, everyone should say what they want to do as a hero. Celia says she wants to become a knight who surpasses those of her family's previous generations, and Artane says that's a good goal. Chloe says she wants to write a spell book that contains only her original spells. This continues, and even Car says he wants to be of help to heroes. Artane says that's great that he wants to support them, and then Leo says that his goal is to completely annihilate Erebos. Artane is surprised, and so is Car and the professors. She says that's amazing, asking what the next goal is, and everybody starts laughing, saying that he's dreaming too big. But it makes sense, he's a freshman. Sejin asks Herod what he thinks, and Herod says it's chilling because he isn't the type to talk in vain. It's been millennia since Erebos was divided into several pieces and sealed, but he's resurrected many times throughout the years, and disaster fell from just one piece's resurrection. Yet he still dreams to eradicate Erebos. Artane says that they will be reading the hero records page retrieved from the dungeon, and after each class guesses which hero's page it is, they'll learn how to clear a hero's world. And just in case anything unexpected happens, all professors will be observing, so don't mess around. The students' hearts start to beat, saying finally, and even Nella is excited, saying it's her first time touching a hero record. Tide is nervous. Artane then tells the representatives of each class to step forward. We see Celia, Leo, Abad, and Xia all walking forward, and she says that 2 hero records were recovered this time, and of course they'll only be using one for the lesson. One is a very small piece, and they brought out the other one as well to show them what they look like. She tells Leo to choose one, and as soon as he picks it up, it starts to release a golden aura and a bunch of text float around the room, and Leo looks a little surprised. It's said the hero record is now open. As it starts to shine even brighter, it says the name for the world and chapter is blanked out as a giant magic circle appear beneath Leo and Artane. Sejin is surprised that it's going rogue, and when they all look around, they see a very ominous sight as it's a complete battlefield. It looks very similar to the scene we saw at the beginning when they went to fight Erebus. If you've watched till the end, comment, Bosh, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.